Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Talking Cardboard. I'm John, and I'm going to be doing my top 30 games of the past year. Corey is also doing a similar series of videos, but we thought it would be interesting to kind of see what both of our opinions are and what's changed in the past year when we did our top 10 video as a group. I think the plan is to eventually do the top 10 with some of the other guys and just see what we all think. So, without further ado, let's get started. My number 30 game this year is Downforce. Downforce is a great game. I always bring it when we have a larger group. We play it at Extra Life every year just because it's so entertaining. Essentially all Downforce is it's a racing game where at the beginning of the game you're basically auctioning off the different color race cars to each player. Depending on the player count, you might get multiple, and then you're dealt a hand of cards, and you're using these cards to move the cars around the board. The catch is on each card there may be multiple car colors, which in that case you have to move all the color cars on the card, so you're moving your opponent's cars as well. And as cars pass these checkpoints, you have to make bids down onto your piece of paper on who you think's going to win. So you have like 3 levels you're trying to manage throughout the game. You're trying to manage who you think's actually going to win, because you can get money based on that. You're trying to get your card to, first, second, or third, because that's where you make really the big bucks. And you're also trying to minimize the amount you're bidding on a car during the auction in order to maximize your profits at the end of the race. This game is great, like I said, great for a big group. It's pretty simple, not too complicated. I think we've had a lot of new players pretty much pick it up in one sitting. But the best part is, as you're moving your cars through the board, you're hitting all these choke points. You're really trying to find ways of getting cars stuck behind each other so that when you play a card that maybe has a high number of movement points for one of your opponents, maybe you've boxed them in now and they can't move at all, so you get a little boost for your car, maybe some of the other players. But it's really interesting to balance how you want your car to do in the race versus the car you think's actually going to win the race. Good game for a bigger group and gamers that may not be as big into the board game scene. Just really simple, really fun, and people have always had a good time, and I've always had a good time. So I enjoy getting that to the table whenever I can. My number 29 game this year is actually a game we picked up at PAX Unplugged back in 2019 when we could still go to conventions. It was actually the only game I bought there, and that is Azul Summer Pavilion. Now, we've always loved Azul. Like, Corey got that a few years ago. Great game, the tiles are beautiful, the gameplay is pretty simple, straightforward, and it's overly fun. But I feel Summer Pavilion really took that to the next level. Instead of providing like a vague victory condition for one of the players in the original Azul, Azul Summer Pavilion took that and put like a 6-round limit on the game, which actually allows you kind of to strategize more, plot out what you want to do. You still kind of have some risk with the tiles you're trying to take and, holding on to for when the tiles become wilds in future rounds. It's just formatted, I think, a lot more solidly for someone who likes to plan out what they're doing than the original Azul. I really like the strategy of trying to fill in the window panes or the snowflakes or whatever they're technically called, balanced with like filling in other parts of the board. Like you get bonus points for getting like all the 4 spots filled in or the 3s, or you have this middle wild card pane that you're trying to fill in, and there's just a lot of balancing going on, and it's really fun to strategize around what tiles are available when you're doing the draft to fill in what you need to maximize the end game scoring that you're going to try to go for. Azul Summer Pavilion is a game where you have these 9 markets on the center of the table, and you are allowed to draft all the tiles of one color off each market, and the rest go into the center. Now, as you're doing that, anyone can decide to take a certain color of tile from the center of the market, which also gets you first player, but there is like a negative points associated with being the first player to pull out of that center area, which adds kind of a cool dynamic on when you want to maybe make a more valuable play while at the same time giving up some points. After the draft phase is when the players get to place tiles onto their board. The board itself is made up of, I believe, 6 different colored snowflakes or window panes or whatever they are. And you're basically, the window panes have 1 through 6 spots, and each spot corresponds to the number of tiles you need to place a piece onto that spot. You're trying to fill that up, and as you do so, if you surround like a bonus square, it's allowing you to pull extra tiles from this other expansion board that has, a little indicator of how many bonus tiles you get when you can fill or surround a certain space, and just has some tiles out there of various colors for that. And then you can kind of like plan your bonus moves around that, which I think is really cool. The last aspect of this game is that there's endgame scoring, and most of the endgame points are based around either filling in a complete snowflake or window pane, as well as filling in each of the spaces that are like 4 tiles in cost or 5 tiles in cost, which adds a kind of cool dynamic on getting points in the game. The other great thing about Azul Summer Pavilion, it's another one of those easy to teach games, really I think good for beginner gamers, so it's another one I always suggest or bring whenever I know I'm playing with some friends that may not be as big into the board game scene or really haven't played many more complex board games before, and I think that's a really another good strong suit of Azul Summer Pavilion, so that's why it gets number 29. Number 28 is actually a game I haven't played in a while, but it is one of the first games I played when I started getting into the board game scene with Corey. As far as I remember, he still owns this game, and I think I'm kind of in the unique position of being one of the few people that really, really like this game, but that game is Ethnos. Ethnos at its heart, I would say, is a card drafting game with some elements of area control. Essentially what you have in this game is you have these 12 clans of creatures of various colors, cards, and what you're trying to do is either make tribes of similar creatures or similar color, and every time you play a tribe, you get a benefit based on what your tribe leader is, which is either the creature, or it's always the creature, but like obviously if you have a clan of only the same creature, you're choosing what color you want, and that creature is always going to be the same. Or you could have various creatures of the same color, and then you have to pick which creature is your leader to get that effect. So the bigger the tribe you play, the more points you're going to get at the end of the round. But the benefit of playing smaller tribes is to get these powerful bonuses from the unique clans. If you play a tribe of, I believe it's 3 or greater than your last tribe, I can't exactly remember how it works off the top of my head, which is not great. You have to place a control marker down onto one of 6 territories on the board based on the color tribe you played. Essentially, this is the area control mechanism of the game, and each zone is randomly assigned some bonus points for the end of the round. And that's another reason why you're trying to play these larger tribes down, or as many tribes as you can that are around 3 or 4 in strength, just so you can get more markers on the board to really establish that area control. I've really enjoyed this game. Again, I think it's pretty straightforward. It gets a little confusing with some of the special abilities some of the tribes have, and there's a lot of extra little boards that you can start getting onto the table depending on what tribes you're using in the game. But I don't know, another game that I don't know if I just like it because it was so pivotal on getting me engaged into the board game hobby, but I would like to think I actually do enjoy it. I mean, I love bringing it to the table and would never say no to playing it. So there we have it, number 28, Ethnos. Stop Thief. Stop Thief is actually a game that I think I've only played like 2 or 3 separate occasions, but it really made an impression on me for something that is simple and really like gets you thinking and is fun. At its core is, I guess, I don't even know what kind of game. It's a deduction-based game. You can play co-op or competitively, although it still retains some of its co-op elements even when you're playing competitively. But essentially what's happening is you have an app, and the app's giving you audio clues as to where a thief is running through basically an intersection of a city where you've got a few buildings with valuables within them, and the thief is trying to steal these valuables. The audible clues then are given to you are either like, indoor footsteps, glass breaking, alarms going off, or a valuable being stolen. And based on like the area the thief started in, you kind of have to piece together where the thief is moving just based on these audio clues. And it's really fun. It's really hard too if you kind of lose track of what some of the past audio clues were, because it could go like indoor footstep, glass breaking. You're like, okay, let's see if they were, started in this building. Now you start looking at what paths would even make sense for those audio clues to like be in sync with. But obviously if you forget something, now all of a sudden you're left wondering where the heck they went, or they could even be in a different building and maybe you miss them jumping out to the street, or they can take the subway, which brings them to one of the four corners of the map, which just makes things all that much more complicated, but also that much more interesting. I think this is another good, bring it to a, party game night or something where you're not looking for anything too heavy. Again, really easy to teach someone and have them get the gist of what's going on, especially if you're playing cooperatively, since you can all kind of work together. And again, really fun game, really made a good impression even though I've only played it a few times, but definitely one of those games I'd love to get to the table again and play more. Finally, at number 26 is a game that's pretty old now, and I've actually been playing long before I really got hardcore into the board game hobby. But that game is Carcassonne. Carcassonne, at its heart, is a tile-laying game. Basically what you're doing is you're randomly choosing a tile out of a bag, and then you have to fit it legally onto the board based on the land types on the sides of the tile. So the tiles can include anything from like a city space to a river, a road, a monastery, or just like farmland. And you basically have to fit the piece onto the board in a legal move, and then once you place the tile, you're allowed to take one of your 7 meeple and place it on, or claim a section of that tile. Claiming essentially is how you get your points. So let's say you place a tile with a monastery and you claim the monastery. The rules with monasteries are that once you've gotten all the tiles around that filled in, you get to pull your meeple off and you claim 9 points. Roads work in that if you claim a road, once they're complete, you get points based on the length of the road. Pretty simple. Cities are pretty similar, where if you claim a city, the city's complete, you're getting 2 points per tile included in the city. And pretty much all the scoring works somewhat similarly, except for farmland, which is a little unique. And sometimes can be confusing how that works, or how you can kind of jump in on other people's farmland. But essentially farmland is end game scoring, where if you claim a section of just grassland and it ends up connecting to various cities that get completed, you're getting 3 points at the end of the game for each city that is touching door farmland. I would say Carcassonne is another good beginner game. It seems a little complicated on the surface, as there's no quick summary of how things work, but really there's not a lot of different rules to the game, right? Everything's pretty straightforward on what you can or can't do, and the tiles, there's really no room for error when you're placing one, although I will admit that sometimes you get a tile down and don't realize that one side is not matching up to a road that you might have missed, or some farmland you accidentally butt up to a city tile on accident. But for the most part, the game is pretty easy to teach, pretty easy for someone to learn, I think, and is overall really fun because I think there is a lot of competitive maneuvering in this game, which just makes it really interesting in my opinion. So there you have it. Number 26 is Carcassonne. That is the start to my top 30 list for the past year. Already you can kind of tell there's some games that already fell pretty far off my top 10 from last year, which is kind of great because that means we played a lot of really good things this year, or I just got more plays into games that I didn't really have an opinion on yet. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and if you do have any comments on the games I've liked, please leave them down below. Otherwise, I look forward to sharing the next 25 games on the list, and hope to see you there.